A surreal day in American history. Former President Donald Trump on his way back to Florida after surrendering himself at a Manhattan courthouse. He was arrested, fingerprinted, and pled not guilty to 34 felony counts of falsifying business records. We're expecting to hear from President Trump later tonight. Brian Yennis is outside the courthouse in Lower Manhattan to break down the charges. Brian.
Jesse, good evening. That's right. So former President Trump charged with 34 felony counts of falsifying business records here in the state of New York. Just moments ago, well, about a couple hours ago, the District Attorney of Manhattan, Alvin Bragg, laid out his case. Listen.
Donald Trump was arraigned on a New York Supreme Court indictment returned by a Manhattan grand jury on 34 felony counts of falsifying business records in the first degree. Under New York state law, it is a felony to falsify business records with intent to defraud and an intent to conceal another crime. That is exactly what this case is about.
So DA Bragg is charging former President Trump with 34 felony counts. That's a felony count for every single falsified business record that they have in evidence, apparently. Now, as he mentioned, in New York, in order to be found guilty of a felony count or be charged with a felony count, you have to be found to have been trying to hide or a second crime. So in this case, what Bragg is alleging is that essentially former President Trump falsified business records in furtherance of his 2016 presidential election, which is a violation of New York state election law, because under New York state election law, you can't be promoting a candidate or your candidacy under unlawful means. That's as best as we have, as we see it based on his press conference in terms of understanding the charges. Now, in terms of what happened inside the courtroom, the former president did not say a word. He sat stoically. Our courtroom producer, Jake Gibson, says that at one point he described the former president walking into the courtroom with swagger. He stared down Alvin Bragg before he left that courtroom. He verbally pleaded not guilty to all 34 counts. There were two big motions that happened inside that courtroom. One was about timing. The other was about a potential gag order. The prosecution bringing up posts on Truth Social that the former president had posted that they believed could have incited violence, and they essentially asked or requested this judge to issue a gag order. At least they implied that they wanted one. And in that case, Judge Juan Merchan said that he was going to request that Trump not further post things that could incite violence, and that if he were, then that they would revisit that request. And the second big thing that happened inside there was about timing. The prosecution asking for this case to be pushed all the way to January, which would be right at the heart and the start of the Republican primary election season. The defense wanted this case to be pushed back even further. They found that this case, the next hearing will now be December 4th, and that former President Trump must be here in person. The defense argued, why should the former president be here in person? You can understand the undue burden that has put on the city of New York. That argument rang on deaf ears, and Judge Juan Merchan said the former president needs to be here December 4th for the next hearing. Jesse, guys.
Ryan, thanks so much. Judge Jeanine, you spent some time in the courtroom. How do you see things developing today?
Well, I'll start with the last thing that was just said, and that is that the defendant needs to be present on, I believe it was December 4th, if I have the date right.
It's a Monday.
That is ridiculous, because it is only a hearing to submit motions or to get a decision on motions. Okay, it is ministerial. It's where the prosecutor, the judge, and the defense attorney get together, and there is either a decision issued on the motion or there is the discussion that they'll argue the motions. But the overall response that I have to all of this is it's less significant than I thought it would be in the first place. This is a whole lot of nothing. And, you know, defense attorneys have done that in every case I ever tried as a prosecutor, and I never thought I'd do it to an indictment myself. First of all, the indictment is insufficient on its face. What that means is that the prosecutor does not allege what the other crime is. So he's saying he falsified records with intent to commit another crime. We don't know what the other crime is, and even Alvin Bragg, when he was asked about it, said, well, we had evidence this time that they didn't have last time as it related to why now. But in addition to that, we've got election law And we've got text messages and emails. What are you talking about? Why not identify the crime that is giving you the ability to take a dead misdemeanor and give it new life, like a phoenix rising out of the out of the sand? Now, if anyone looks at this indictment, they will realize also that in addition to being insufficient on its face, it is duplicitous. And what that means is they've got, if you look at the first 4 counts, they all occurred on February 14th of 2017. That means you've got the same course of conduct. They're just looking at it differently. Okay, so nobody get excited about the 34 counts. They're meaningless. And there will also be a bill of particulars. In the bill of particulars, which is required to be submitted in New York State within 15 days, it may be extended to 35 if the judge wants to give the DA a break. They've got to be real clear on what the bill of particulars says, because the defendant has the right to prepare for trial. And this is garbage. You don't have a right to prepare, or you don't know what to prepare for on this. And by the way, you know, the whole concept that Bragg gets up and he talks about, you know, this is New York, we are the center of the financial world, and all that hogwash, doesn't explain why he takes every felony he can find, 50% at the bare minimum, and turns it into misdemeanors, but wants this misdemeanor to be a felony. And why did the defense have to come back? Why does why does Donald Trump have to come back in December when it's going to cost New York City millions of dollars? And any prosecutor would consider the cost to the city or the county in deciding whether or not the appearance of the defendant is necessary. And, I mean, I could go on, but...
Well, should we hear from the other lawyer at the table? We got one sitting right here. Would you like to say anything about what the judge just asserted?
So this is a tough day. I think any time, and I watched the president's face as he left Trump Tower, and I watched him as the pictures that we saw, or I should say the live picture of him walking into the courtroom, and then the picture that they took in the courtroom of him 2 or 3 times. And it's the first time I'd ever seen, I don't know the president that well, I know him personally, but I'd never seen him look that way. It was obvious the weight of the moment. It was serious for him. So you look at him, and the humanity of the situation certainly screams at you. Whether you like his politics or not, you cannot help but understand what that picture connoted. 2, I agree with the judge. New York law, as the judge knows, does not require, if you cite a federal law, for you to actually, if you say a federal law was broken, you don't have to cite it. However, D.A. Bragg should have cited what the federal law is. He's playing it by the book here, and I think, but in light of the fact this is the former president of the United States, this is a matter that on the face we know that we believe the Southern District of New York, the U.S. Attorney's Office passed on some of this. The former DA, Cy Vance, his office passed on some of this. So I think the burden, whether it's fair or not, was higher on the district attorney to lay some of these things out. Now, as you read the indictment, it reads like a daytime soap opera in so many ways. The things and we knew a lot of these things from 2016, and voters were aware of some of the allegations from some of the women that are talked about, the 2 women that are talked about in this, and we all know what Michael Cohen did. I think the question now, I think for the president and his legal team, is how quickly do they want to go forward with this? Meaning, they will file the requisite motions to dismiss. It'll be interesting to see how the judge reacts. I'm going to assume his lawyers are going to lay out that these matters were passed on by 2 other legal offices, including the U.S. Attorney's Office. I'll be curious to see how this judge handles it. One thing I do hope we all are able to accept is that our judicial system works. And this judge here will have an opportunity to weigh all of these facts, to weigh the motions, which I assume will come. That Mr. Trump's attorneys have not consulted with me, but I assume that they're going to file these motions. And I expect this judge, who seems to want to move quickly, December 4th didn't seem quick enough to me, but I would assume that former President Trump would want it to move quickly. And I would assume the judge, you take him at his word that he wants to consider all these motions quickly. On a personal level, I was expecting a little more, Jesse. I was expecting a little more. And at a minimum, I do hope at some point that the district attorney here in New York will tell us what that other crime, what the other.
Well, he has to in the bill of particulars.
Well, so I was disappointed, Judge, that he didn't do it there.
Yeah, I agree.
That's all my point, and I'd hope that he does it before too long.
And Harris, the president right now is en route to Mar-a-Lago, where he will be addressing many people tonight at 8:15, we believe.
I want to take this unpack this backwards order here. So the file motions will come in August. That's when the defense can move on that. December 4th, I had some thoughts about that, Judge. They didn't get what they wanted. They were hoping that it was going to be crazy. And that judge was going to be able to slap on a gag order and you've been cited and you've done all that. And he was buttoned up because the Secret Service handled him. You didn't see the cuffs. You didn't see any of that. They set the rules. They set the tone. They protected him. And so they didn't get the circus that you know, I was on when that news conference happened yesterday with the police commissioner and Mayor Eric Adams, and how, you know, we're getting ready, and to Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, you better be on your best behavior, and all this kind of stuff. And I mean, talk about incitement. Why don't you just, you know, throw some gasoline where there is no fire and then hope it sparks? But a couple of things. I caught what you were talking about. I try to be the judge sometimes, think like her. In the 8th count, I caught what you were talking about in the first 4. I saw some dates, like April 13th, 2017. That's a loaded date. They're going to do a lot with that date. And I don't have your acumen as a judge or a legal expert, but when I looked at that, I thought, oh, there's something else they're going to need. They're going to need Michael Cohen. How important is he to this case? Oh, a criminal liar. A criminal liar. And that seems critical, because that would really show just what Harold said. Nothing is new in this case. They're going backward to the person that they know tells the most lies, gets away with it until he didn't legally. And that date, April 13, 2017, we've already seen him in the Access Hollywood video with Billy Bush and all that. That's in here. I didn't understand how that fit with a white-collar crime, which Alvin Bragg says that's the kind of crime that New York City attorneys go after, district attorneys. Well, I'm glad I know the kind of crime he goes after, because violent crime is rampant. Yeah. So at least there's something that he's going to fight. And then the last thought I had was, what do you say to the crowd tonight? At 7:01 this morning, many of us in the media got the Make America Great Again, Inc. email, which said, President Trump is the clear frontrunner in 2024 Republican presidential primary, and it laid out taking a look at New Hampshire registered voters. Trump 42, DeSantis 29, and then everybody else who's running. They started the day with politics. He can talk about that now if he wants.
Sure.
I would imagine you would tell him as attorneys, yeah, I wouldn't talk about this case, because that judge, I think, meant he's waiting for the circus. You didn't bring it, but he will slap a gag order on you. Mm-hmm. So there's an opportunity tonight. I'm curious to know, is he going to go this route, talk about inflation, prices, how he's going to save America? Where's he going to go? I think that's the biggest part of the day. So I actually was surprised by the lack of there in the news conference by the district attorney, who obviously was thinking he was on his come up. He was going to make it big off this case, but then laid it out the way I would as a layperson. Mm-hmm. Light on the facts until maybe we can figure out how to sell it. I think I could have sold it better.
Oh.
I think we all could have.
How you doing, Jesse? Good evening to all of you. Nice to be with you. This today has reminded me why I never went to law school. And I'll leave it to the legal minds to take us through it. Just a couple observations here. For the past 6 days, every legal analyst we've had on this network has said, I need to see the indictment. Well, what do you think about, I need to see the indictment? What are you doing for lunch? I need to see the indictment. Well, now we have seen the indictment, and even CNN thinks this is thin. Look, we've got 5 people around a table right now. They've had 7 people around a table since noon today, and it continues at this hour. Last hour, that a former counsel, U.S. Assistant AG, saying it's pretty underwhelming. These facts have been out there for 7 years. John Bolton, no friend of Donald Trump today, right? He wasn't buying it. He said this complaint can easily be dismissed. It's that thin. Bolton's got a legal background as well. All these comments really surprised me quite a bit. But Harris, you mentioned something about the reality in New York today, and we can get that throughout the hour here. But I would just remind everybody that 2 weeks ago today, President Xi was in Moscow meeting with Vladimir Putin.
Yep.
For 3 days. Not 3 hours, not for some photo op in Red Square and the fly back to Beijing. For 3 days. And what do you think they were talking about? You know, more than just the land borders between Russia and China that they still have some disputes to this day. They're talking about how they're going to divide up the world. And the decisions that Mohammed bin Salman, MBS, is now making in Saudi Arabia about, a peace deal with Iran. China's in the middle of that. He's inviting Assad to a summit that will take place in Saudi Arabia. All of this is happening while we're watching this.
And he cut oil production, too.
And he cut oil production to a million a day. So
barrels a day.
if you're a fan of cable news, look, I'm a child of cable news. I grew up in it almost 28 years, and I love it. But every channel throughout the past 14 hours has been on the Trump story. There's a lot of important matters happening in the world outside of this.
Right, and it was a Bush League indictment if you read it, and everybody expected more, and we do expect to hear more from the president tonight at 8:15 from Mar-a-Lago. Bill Hemmer.
Well, we will see that tonight at 8:15, right? And we'll be watching that to see what he has to say. Alvin Bragg, though, the DA here in Manhattan, Jesse, defending this historic decision to charge former President Trump with 34 counts of falsifying business records.
I've been doing this for 24 years. I don't bring cases prior to a thorough and rigorous investigation. Now, having done so, the case has been brought.
Why now?
Well, as I just mentioned, we have had available to the office additional evidence that was not in the office's possession prior to my time here. The basis for business integrity and a well-functioning business marketplace is true and accurate record keeping. That's the charge that's brought here, falsifying New York State business records.
Okay, so Bragg's decision flies in the face of what the American people think about the politics of this indictment. While 60% say they approve of the charges, an overwhelming 76% say politics played a role. 52% go a step further, saying it played a major role, and that poll just came out this week. Back with us out here, Alvin Bragg said, I think the quote was, "We cannot and will not normalize serious criminal conduct." And I think you've had 35,000 cops who haven't had a day off since last Friday. If you want to criminalize serious conduct, come to my neighborhood, because I can show you a ton of it at my subway stop where I live. Jeanine, this will come back into focus about the reality of American cities today. And the question will be, why don't you put your attention on that?
Because what you've got is a woke Democrat prosecutor and a lot of these Democrat cities that are not interested in the victim of crime. I've spent 32 years of my life fighting for that crime victim, and they are now being ignored. And when you get to the point where you bring an indictment against a former president of the United States running for president again, talk about, a third world country. I mean, it better be serious. This is not serious. Harris said Michael Cohen's in that indictment. This guy, you can't, every time he opens his mouth, he's lying. Whether it's Congress, whether it's on television, he is a perjurer. And they want to rest the indictment on his testimony. And I got one better. When they asked him, why did you wait so long? Why did you wait so long? He didn't have an answer. He said, we have evidence that they didn't have before. Hogwash. After this guy Costello came in and testified in the grand jury saying that Michael Cohen was a nut job and a liar, who did they bring back? They brought back David Pecker from AMI. I mean, David Pecker, that whole catch and kill, they knew that in 2016, 2015, 2017. There's nothing new here. So one of the additional charges that they can use in this case is not just selective prosecution, but in the motion to dismiss, there is a delay. And there was a recent Court of Appeals case in New York in a rape case no less, where the Court of Appeals said, you waited too long. And this is beyond the statute of limitations. That case was not. That case was not. There was not a 30-30 problem, and I won't explain it. But they've got a lot of explaining to do. This case should not get past the sufficiency of the indictment stage.
Yes, Alvin Bragg did do one thing today, Harold. He completed a campaign promise, did he not? I mean, when he was running for this office, he said he was proud of the fact that he sued Donald Trump hundreds of times, I believe was the quote he used, and that he was going to go after him yet again. And for a while there, it seemed like you couldn't even run for office in New York unless you said, I'm going to get Trump. Today, did he take a step in that direction?
I don't know. Well, he obviously took a step because he brought an indictment against the former president. I'd say two things. One, I think all the points you made, Bill, about the things that are happening around the globe, we should focus on that a lot more everywhere. And I think there's no shortage of things that we sometimes focus on in the media that we should not, because I agree with you. What that balloon that has been misrepresented about what it was gathering and what's happened in China, that's something we should focus on a lot more. Two, I was disappointed today only because I thought more was going to be there, but that doesn't mean that nothing is there. And I think that the things that the president's going to have to answer for, his lawyers will do that. And seems like he's got a top-notch legal team, and we'll see what happens. Now, I think you raise a larger problem about DAs. We shouldn't elect. This woman here was elected DA, and she may have run on a platform of fighting crime and making communities safer, and he did too. He made it as an element, one of the elements going after Donald Trump, and voters here in New York voted for him. I happen to believe that we shouldn't elect judges or DAs, but that's just me. I don't think that they shouldn't be out campaigning in those offices.
So how would they get there? You just want them to get there by
I would appoint them like we do judges, Harris, the same way.
Backroom politics.
Well, but either way, well, we can have that conversation too. My only point is, but the only point is, you can't say he ran on a platform that he delivered on.
Actually, you can.
But Harris, let me just finish.
I'll wait for you to finish.
But so you can't be critical of the fact that he did that when that's what our process is. I think DAs should not. I don't think we should elect judges either, because by definition, you know what that means? That means those offices are politicized. Finally, I hope tonight, Harris, I want to answer your point. I think you raised the salient point tonight for President Trump. I hope he focuses. He entered his plea of not guilty, and he is presumed innocent. Every Democrat and Republican should know he is innocent this evening until and unless evidence and facts are proven in a courtroom and a jury believes otherwise. Two, if I were him, I'd focus on why I wanted to run for president and lay out all of the issues, including some of the things that you raised, Bill, about what's happening in China, including inflation and some of those things. That's why people, I think, are going to elect him or not elect him as the Republican nominee, and eventually, if he is a nominee up against a Democrat.
Harris, your name was invoked.
It certainly was. A couple things. Again, in reverse order. I don't think you need to worry about what Trump will figure on and where he's going to focus. He went to East Palestine, Ohio, when it was hell. It was still on fire. When did Biden go?
I was saying you're right. I wasn't arguing.
I know,
I think he should say those things.
I think
he should say
that
those
I'm
things.
right.
Again, on that part, you're exactly right.
Honestly, if you look at what he's been doing versus, and we'll get into it a little bit later in the show, where is Biden is the segment. But when you look at what he's capable of doing, he can make the tide rise if he wants. The current president hasn't been able to do that on the economy, and he's been gone since last week. He's had a couple of gaffes. He needs to figure out where the twisters hit in Mississippi. Maybe he'll do that next. But when you talk about Alvin Bragg and how things are, he has a choice. He doesn't have to run and say, I'm going to pin everything on going after one guy. He did that so that his staff would stop leaving. They said, you're not going to go after Trump. We're out. Pomerantz, who wrote the book you're holding right there, right? I'm out. You're not going after Trump. You're breaking your campaign promise. And that's when he said, well, I didn't say I wasn't going to go after him. I just want to have a better case. Was today a better case?
Yeah.
You're an attorney. I didn't see it. I read the statement of facts. I read the indictment. It's pretty cut and dry, no.
Jesse, you have been very patient.
Fat Alvin's a laughing stock. We were on the edge of our seats waiting for the DA to come out and say he had video of Trump hiding a dead body at Trump Tower, maybe a picture of him handing a briefcase full of cash to an election official. He had nothing. He came out and he didn't meet the moment. He didn't meet the moment. And even the media knew he didn't meet the moment because the man couldn't sell it. If you can't explain the charge in 30 seconds, you don't have a case. And the man could not explain the charge. He didn't even put the felony charge, the election charge, in the indictment and said, no, I didn't really have to. So I did. Get out of here, man. You're charging a former president and you didn't even say what the charge is? Come on. So he's spending how many millions of dollars on this circus? He's shutting down the FDR Drive.
Yep.
He's hiring how many police officers? How much manpower is going into the DA's office on this case alone? Meanwhile, you got a crime wave out here, and he has the nerve to come out and say he doesn't want to normalize, crime. Come on, man. His case is built on a disbarred lawyer who served prison time for lying, a porn actress who actually had to pay Trump because she lied about the NDA, and Michael Avenatti, who, where is he now? Oh, actually, he's in prison. So this is the crux of the case that you're building. And I got to tell you, you're putting Donald Trump's life in danger. You're setting him up and advertising the entire world. The former president of the United States, the Republican nominee for the presidency, is going to be at this location at this time on this date. And you got towers and you got windows.
Oh, my God.
You think that's good for this country to put a man like that in a certain location December 4th? And then what if it goes to trial? He has to be there every day. You think the Secret Service wants that? That is dangerous. And he is playing a dangerous game.
Big job. That's a Monday, by the way. It might be a good day to take off in this city after you saw everything today. Jesse is officially in the come on man category.
Yeah, I know.
All right, we're going to put him down for that.
Hi, everyone. I'm Brian Kilmeade. I want you to do me a favor. I want you to click to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page. This is the only way that I know for sure that you're not going to miss any great commentary, any great news bites, any great interviews coming your way on Fox. You can get it all here on YouTube. So subscribe right now.